By crown and blade, we swear this oath.
What was lost in darkness shall be reclaimed in fire.
Nano Banana Pro is officially here, and yeah, it's a technological breakthrough. 4K output, Google search pulling real web data during generation, and here's the big one, it's powered by Gemini 3 Pro, which is Google's reasoning model, not the 2.5 Flash model from the original Nano Banana. Which means instead of just executing your prompt, it reasons through visual logic, plans what needs to change, evaluates the relationship between elements, and maintains what's working while fixing what's not. The internet agrees, this thing is legit. But it's expensive, and that's got everyone asking the same question. Is the premium quality actually worth the price bump? I've just spent the last few days running this through my cinematic testing framework, not making memes, not testing features just for the sake of testing. I'm talking about the stuff that actually matters for AI filmmakers. Can you maintain character identity lock across a multi-shot sequence? Can you generate alternate versions of a scene, change the style, blend multiple elements together, even create a reverse shot of a character who wasn't there before without rebuilding everything? Can you generate coverage angles from that same scene that actually cut together seamlessly? Because in the grand scheme of things, here's what actually matters for AI filmmakers. Can you actually build an audience with what this creates? The kind of following that shows up for your next upload, subscribes to your channel, and are begging for episode 2 of your AI narrative film. That's what we're about to find out, so let's jump into the video right now. Before we get too far in the video, I do want to say that I've tested about 26 things with Nano Banana Pro, which means that there are over 26 prompts that I used during the testing in this video, which also means that I'm not going to be able to stop and read every single prompt that I use because some of the prompts get pretty elaborate. So what I've done is I've taken every single prompt that I've used in this video and I've placed them in the prompts database in the AI Cinematographer's Midjourney Playbook. So if you log into the course, be sure to look for the Nano Banana Pro cheat sheet code prompts tab, and you'll see this description right here where I say I used a Claude Sonnet AI agent that I trained on Nano Banana Pro that returns precision prompts. These are final result prompts, which means that I continued to iterate on the prompt in Claude with my AI agent until we arrived at prompts that actually worked. So don't worry if you can't read every single prompt on the screen that I go through in this workflow. All you have to do is log into the course, navigate to where the prompts database link is, and not only get the exact 26 prompts that I'm using, but also be able to study the prompts and understand its mechanics so that you can apply these prompts and techniques to your own AI filmmaking endeavors. If you're currently not a student in the AI Cinematographer's Midjourney Playbook, then all you have to do is look for the link below this video. It's probably going to be in the first pinned comment. It'll also be in the description in this video, or you can just scan the QR code on your screen and enroll in the course to get started today. So what we're going to do is walk through all of the various testing I did with Nano Banana Pro as it relates to AI cinematic filmmaking, and I'm going to be demonstrating that using Freepik's new node-based workflow that they call Spaces. If you're not using this feature, I highly recommend that you check it out because it is an excellent way to get a bird's eye view over your entire cinematic sequence. For instance, at this high level, you see that I've been doing various things throughout this space, but this could easily be one particular AI narrative film that you're working on, and all of these could be various scenes throughout the entire film. And to get to Freepik Spaces, you're going to want to go to freepik.com, and all you have to do is just hover over here on the left hand side and you'll see this little Spaces tab on the left, and if you click that, it's going to take you to this page, and you may or may not have anything here, but these are the things that I've been working on. And the reason why this image is on the new one that I'm testing is because I literally just duplicated this particular space, and once I came in here, I deleted everything else that I didn't want to focus on, and I started building from there. So this was the only thing that carried over from the previous workspace, but if you watch the previous video, then you'll remember exactly where this came from, as well as this image right here. But I'm only wanting to point that out because if you duplicate a workspace and you do what I did, this could be a little bit confusing because they pretty much look identical, and right now there's no way way to change the cover of your workspace, that would be awesome if they implement that in the future. Just FYI. The first thing I wanted to test, which I know that most people would be interested in just getting started with Nano Banana Pro, is how this model stacks up against the previous version of Nano Banana. And here we're using the exact same image and prompt from the previous video, to where we're changing the reference image to an authentic 1980s detective power suit styling. And again, the only purpose of this particular iteration was to change this reference image to this image right here based on the prompt, and that actually executed flawlessly with Nano Banana 1. And so the only thing I did was to connect the same prompt box to the same reference image as you see right here, and this is what the newer version looks like in Nano Banana Pro. Now, the word that I will use for this is that to me it seems there's more fidelity in the images themselves. If you look at the badge looks much more detailed, and the aesthetic of the image just looks a bit more detailed. So again, if we zoom in on the badge on the previous image, I mean, it just looks a bit flat. It's still not bad, don't get me wrong, but when we compare it to the newer version, I would say I prefer this version because again, the image just seems a bit more detailed. It's like the AI put more thought into generating the image. Another thing that I'll note, which a lot of you guys will appreciate, is that Nano Banana has done a very good job for the most part in keeping body composition. And I'll show you some better examples once I started to figure this out as we go further into the examples. But if you look at this image, the leg structure looks a lot more closer to the reference image. I mean, to me, it seems exactly the same. And again, I think it's a lot better than this particular image, to where you lose some of that in Nano Banana 1. Also of note is that she looks a lot more flat chested here, and the same thing is happening in Nano Banana 2. And I've tried to solve for this, and I'll show you about that later in the video. But you've got to find a way to structure your prompts so that you can call out what you're asking for without AI moderation kicking in. Here's the image from Nano Banana 1, where this is supposed to be a homicide scene. And this scene does look cinematic. It's a bit confusing because this looks like this may be a badge here on the ground, but you really don't have any idea of what's going on in this scene if you were just going to use it just like this. Which again, let's keep in mind, this would have been perfect prior to Nano Banana 2, but now that we have Nano Banana 2, again, you see that this version has much more fidelity and it's much more detailed. We've got shell casing markers here, or that could be blood spatter, who knows. Usually when I'm watching crime shows, they use something like this to mark evidence. We've actually got police tape here that says crime scene, do not cross. We've got a police officer back here with blue gloves on, and it also appears to be raining. Now, what I will say is that these police cars back here don't really make sense because they're pretty much brushed up against the wall, and I'm pretty sure that would never happen. The police wouldn't scrape their vehicles up against the wall just to get into an alley. So you definitely have to use your AI eye and keep things like that in mind. And one of the things I will say is that when Nano Banana Pro released initially, at least via Freepik, there was an issue to where you would ask for a 16:9 image, but they would only give you something like 2:3. Because as you can see here, I specifically asked for 16:9 and I did not get that. But as of this video, that's actually been resolved. And again, just want to call out, I did not change the prompt. The only thing I did was connect the prompt box to a new image generator, and I connected this image to the reference image up here. Now for this particular comparison, I did change the prompt a bit because what was happening is that Nano Banana via Freepik was generating a 16:9 image, but the face was out of frame. And it turns out that once I refreshed, once the system actually caught up with itself, it actually ended up being 2:3. So again, I thought there was something going on with Nano Banana to where the image just continued to be out of the frame. And that's why I added in the prompt, ensure her face is in frame. But outside of that, it's essentially the same prompt as the previous prompt to get this particular scene. This is the version from Nano Banana 1 that you saw in the previous video. I mean, again, it does have a cinematic dramatic effect, but I just think things look a lot better with Nano Banana Pro. And I would arguably say this face is a lot more closer to the reference image than the image from the previous version. And so this is another reason why I recommend that you adopt this node-based workflow type approach, because as you can see, the only thing I did was take everything I did previously and was quickly able to test a new model just by connecting a few nodes together and pressing the generate button. And this type of workflow allows for unlimited possibilities. You can extend this thing out as far as the eye can see and go crazy. And again, you know, if you stop and decide to work on something else, you can always come back to this particular workflow and everything will be exactly how you left it, which allows you to pick up from where you left off. I hope that makes sense. Now for this particular sequence, I decided to start with an image that already looked like how I wanted the character to look in the actual scenes that I wanted to generate. And the only reason this image is in 16:9 is because this was around the time when Nano Banana Pro via Freepik was having the issue of not giving you a 16:9 image. And so I figured that if the reference image is in 16:9, then all of my image generations should come out in 16:9, and that's exactly what happened. But now that that's been fixed, you can absolutely do 16:9 off of a reference image, just like you could previously. And so obviously this is a cyberpunk themed sequence. And again, let's just take a look at the reference image because there are some things that I want to call out. Notice she has a hoodie on her jumpsuit right here. And then also notice her leg tone and overall body composition. I went ahead and used Claude to come up with about 5 different prompts by asking it to imagine my reference character in various scenes in a cyberpunk cinematic short film. If we take a look at the first image, this is the reference character running down a neon lit cyberpunk alley. We do see that the hoodie is present and the body composition lock is there. This was the second image I generated using a different prompt, and it shows her in a data room hacking into some company's internal system. Now it may just be me, but compared to my reference image, I do see a bit of drift in her face. Again, this is what she looks like in the reference image. It's not too far off. To me, in the reference image, her hair seemed a bit more redder and her face seemed a bit more paler. But if anything, it's very close, and I would say it'll be very usable and most people would not know the difference unless you explicitly call it out like I'm doing right now. Now I'm going to show you the other images that generated here pretty quickly because I wanted to walk through some cool things that you could think about in terms of arranging this into a sequence. So here's her on a rooftop with her companion or her sidekick, and again she's got the hoodie on and the body composition is there. This scene kind of doesn't make sense because at his height the ground right here should not be this elevated unless she is on some type of platform in front of him. That's the only way that this scene would work. It was just the first roll that I did, and if you want to confuse the AI even less, then make sure that you don't have any other people generating in your image. It was okay for this prompt because I wanted to show you something pretty cool as well. And what I did here is ask Nano Banana to imagine what the person that was shown on the right side of the previous image that I showed you could potentially look like. And I don't think this came out too bad. It actually took a lot of different rolls to get this exactly to this particular point. These were some of the examples that I got. And the thing that I was trying to get is basically a reverse shot of this guy angled exactly this exact same way. And some of these just wouldn't work for that particular scene. As you can see right here, the guy's turned the wrong way. But on this final roll, this could actually potentially work because if you think about a camera on a camera set, you've got this entire arc of camera views. And if you guys are familiar with things like the rule of thirds and not crossing the line, if some of you did a stint in film school, then just imagine a straight line right here with the woman on this side and the man on this side. And as long as you keep the camera along this arc on the opposite side of that line, then any of these angles would work. But my preference would be a straight up reverse shot with the same exact angling of his shoulders. But again, if you want to save yourself some headache, the best thing to do would be to generate an image just of the woman and then have your other reference image of your character in another shot. But try out both versions, see what works for you. The other thing I want to point out is that during this testing, I ended up finding out that you can actually skip adding a prompt box, as you see right here, and you can just actually put the prompt on an image generator node and just click the generate button. So let me show you exactly what I'm talking about. So again, this image was done off of this reference image because what we're trying to achieve is continuity, and all I did was create a new image generator node, and it says describe the image you want to generate. And if I wanted to, the only thing I would have to do is just copy this entire prompt right here, drop it right here, make sure that you select Nano Banana Pro, and we want it 16:9, and you can do 4K, 2K. Since it's unlimited on Nano Banana at the moment, they're doing a promo just for a few more days only. I've been mostly doing everything in 4K, but sometimes 2K, but it's your call. And here were the last two images. Here's her with the dynamic pose running away from somewhere, and here is an extreme close-up shot of the same character. And just look at the details of her face and just the overall cinematic look of this image, this is a beautiful shot. Now, if I thought about this and I wanted to make this a cinematic sequence just based on the images that I generated, this is how I envision it. Maybe it starts here where she links up with her co-conspirator. He lets her into the control room, tells her she's got 5 minutes to get in, do what she needs to do, and get out. And so now she's in the control room, hacking on the computer. Maybe this is a close-up shot of her doing that. And maybe the reverse shot would be of the screen on this laptop. And now she's done everything she's needed to do. She's got to get the hell out of there. So then here she goes, making a run for it. And then here's the other shot of her in another part of the city, running through an alley. And if we wanted to kind of bring this in a bit closer just so that we can see what's going on, I'm going to highlight these two. I'm going to drag this right here. So that's the first sequence. This is the second sequence. And here is third sequence, aka the beginning, the middle, the end. Can I get a hell yes in the comments below this video? Now, here is where I want to show you how Nano Banana Pro has improved over the previous version in terms of keeping the body composition, despite still failing images for what they're saying is NSFW, despite actually giving us exactly what we asked for. I'll explain this in just a minute, but as you can see, this right here is my reference image, and the only thing I asked Nano Banana Pro to do is to create a turnaround sheet, also known as a character sheet, just to get various angles of this particular character. Now, what's interesting is that with all the new features coming out, such as the camera angles feature that Freepik has, as well as OpenArt, as well as Higgsfield and others, reference sheets may become a thing of the past, but they're still very reliable in terms of quickly getting an idea of the various angles for your consistent character. And this was the turnaround sheet that it generated, and I think that came out very well. We've got a front-on view, a 3/4 view, side view, and back view, and this is exactly what you would want and expect for a character reference sheet. And again, as you can see, the body composition held up very well. I did have a chance to test Quinn Edit previously, and Quinn, prior to Nano Banana Pro, was the only image edit tool out there that I knew of that could also keep the exact body proportions. I think Nano Banana / Google is getting smart in that if they don't loosen up on their AI content moderation, they're going to lose out to the Chinese models where you don't run into that issue. Now, the crazy thing is, as you can see right here, this says generation failed, NSFW content detected. The only thing I did was to reference this image right here, the reference image, and the only thing I wanted it to do is to make her stand upright with her feet together, hands down by her side. That was the entire prompt. So for whatever reason, Nano Banana would give me the turnaround sheet, but it would not give me an edited version of her just standing upright with her hands down by her side and her feet together, which doesn't really matter because in the actual turnaround sheet, I got exactly that. So, I mean, that's what we got to deal with as of today. So just keep that in mind. For this test with Nano Banana, I wanted to try out pose control and image compositing with multiple different images, and I'm going to show you how those results turned out. Now, when I generated this particular reference image right here, this is how it came out, but here's something else that I want you to notice. Look at her fingers. I didn't really notice this as I generated it and previewed it, and when I saw that, naturally you'd want to just, regenerate the image to see if you can get an improvement, but I said what I'm going to do is I'm going to test to see if changing the pose will actually fix the fingers, because in the past I've actually done that. Somehow, some way, at some point in time, I figured that if you had an image where the fingers were kind of messed up, and if you did a image to image type change with it, such as when I was in Freepik and I would do something like flux context, I noticed that the fingers would sometimes get improved, and I wanted to test that theory out. So again, this was the reference image, and the only thing I did is tell it to, like I tried to do with the previous image that I showed you, make her stand upright, feet together, hands down by her side, and that worked out flawlessly. And you can see the hands also improved, and the edit kept her muscular legs, which is very important. We've all watched Marvel Marvel and other superhero type movies, and we know that our consistent characters don't have to be twigs. If you like that rail thin look, then that's perfectly fine. I don't, and therefore I shaped my consistent characters in the image that I would like to have seen them on the big screen. So again, the fact that Nano Banana can keep the body composition is a huge jump in this AI space. And don't forget, Nano Banana Pro is powered by Gemini 3. So they're doing some different shit here, and it's going in the right direction so far. And again, I said I wanted to test out pose control as well, and not only did I do this, because as you can see, she never had a weapon to begin with, I also added the type of weapon that I wanted her to hold. And let me show you how I actually pulled this off, because what was happening was, after I got the prompt from Claude, I went over to Midjourney and, I did a few different gens of these images, and this is the one that I landed on. And I was only interested in the sword because I liked how it was standing up vertically, because I want my characters to have these long broadswords, not little daggers and things like that. And I said, this is going to be perfect. And honestly, if this particular character didn't come out as rail thin as she did, that'd be perfect for a consistent character that you could use with Nano Banana and make something off of that. But anyway, the armor looks pretty good as well. And honestly, if I thought about it, I would have just swapped out my reference image for all of this. But the problem that I was running into is I would take this image and then I would just say, hey, just focus on the sword. I only want the sword only. So not only give my consistent character this dynamic pose, but I also want you to have her holding this sword. And the problem was it kept generating this particular image right here. It wouldn't lock on my consistent character, or there may have been an instance where it took my consistent character's face and put it on here. And you can see I rolled this 10 different times, and this was what was going on, which that's not bad. This one, I didn't like the pose or the sword. As you can see, her hands look kind of crazy. And here's one of those examples I told you about where it just basically took the character from Midjourney as opposed to my consistent character. But I still wanted that sword. So what I then did is I went back to Midjourney, I zoomed in on the image, and I just took a snippet of the sword like this. And if you're on a Mac, it's Shift Command 4. I pulled up this tool and then I just outlined this right here. And I took a screenshot of the sword. I came here, I right clicked on the canvas and I clicked upload, and I uploaded this image right here. And that's the screenshot of only the sword. So after that, I connected this sword to this new node where I'm going to generate the image, as well as this reference character image right here to the same node, gave it the prompt, and this is what I came out with. I like that the muscle tone in her legs kept, I like the dynamic pose, and I like that the sword ported over pretty much as a mirror copy. And so I then wanted to get an idea of what she would look like in an actual scene in a movie, and I came up with a prompt that's pretty elaborate. Again, I used Claude for this. I wanted her on a battlefield, and I was actually expecting her to have troops behind her or something like that, but this is the scene that I got, and it's got the dynamic pose, and this is something you could actually take to something like Kling and animate. So image compositing, where you're taking multiple elements and creating one image, is a very powerful feature. And with that, I decided to take another character that I generated in Stable Diffusion, and I wanted to put them both into one scene together. And so what I did was I took the endpoint of this reference image and connected it to a new image generator node. Again, all you have to do is right click here, click on image generator, and you'll get a blank node. And then I connected the endpoint node of this particular reference image to the same image generator node, and I gave it a pretty elaborate prompt that I got from Claude. And I don't see, okay, yeah, if you want the prompt to show, you have to click up here on this info thing. This is the prompt. Again, I'm not going to read all of it because it's pretty elaborate, but basically what I wanted to happen was I wanted to show a scene where they were addressing their troops, and Nano Banana was struggling with what I was asking for because I wanted a low angle shot and I wanted these troops to be a lot closer around them, but I kept getting this high angle shot, and then in other shots it wasn't working out either. I don't have that image history because, as you can see right here, Nano Banana via Freepik or Nano Banana itself was screwing up when I was going through this, and a lot of the image generations were just failing left and right, and the ones that were coming through weren't what I was asking for. But of some of the ones that did work, I did get some pretty interesting scenes like this one right here, but it didn't follow the prompt exactly. This was supposed to be them standing in front of the king, but they're just standing in front of the throne of the king, and the king is not present, but it still looks like a cinematic shot. And this one right here, I suppose it could be them talking to the king, but this is the scene that I was trying to get to happen to where it made it seem like they were talking to their troops. And since they put it in this scene like this that looks similar to the previous scene where they're standing in front of the throne, that's when I changed the prompt and had them in a completely different room, completely completely different location, but this still looks pretty damn good as well. Now, the only thing I wanted to test here is getting an end frame for my reference character. I imagine an anime scene where she's talking to her rival, and as she's doing so, she slowly raises her sword up and pointing toward the rival. Now, obviously, you could probably just prompt exactly what you want without an end frame, but the beauty of end frames is it allows you a bit more of precision. Like, I feel more confident knowing that if the AI does what it's supposed to do, the ending position of her sword in my video would look like this. So again, this image right here would be the start frame, and using a prompt to just tell Nano Banana Pro to have it to raise the right arm and do all of this other stuff in the prompt, this was my end result. It looks exactly the same as the reference image other than having the sword raised, which is exactly what I wanted. Now, it didn't point in the direction that I wanted it to, and after I show you some of these video examples with the dialogue of the character raising her sword, I can't help but think that it came down to AI moderation, because I wanted her to be pointing this sword more in this direction, and the prompt even said point the sword directly at the viewer. Maybe the AI thinks that's too threatening, I don't know, but as you can see, I generated this thing about 6 times and I could not get it to point directly at the camera. It did everything but that pretty much. I mean, this pose right here is okay. I like that. Like, you know, if you want to get past me, you got to get past this sword, something like that, but it's not doing what I asked it to do. So the best I could get was the one that I showed you, which was the 6th generation having the sword point in this direction. Now, surprisingly, after testing this out with Veo 3.1 and WAN 2.5, that's the other reason I thought that this may have to do with something regarding AI moderation, because they don't actually just raise a sword and point it at the viewer. And I was very surprised that Veo 3.1 wasn't able to pull this off.
The only thing I wish to see is you at the end of my blade.
Again, I didn't use fast, I used the normal mode, and I ran it about 3 times and it couldn't do it. Same thing with WAN 2.5. And again, I've got some gripes with WAN 2.5 because they always change the color tone of your generation. As you can see, this is very light compared to some of the generations from Veo 3.1, which keeps the image exactly as it should be in terms of the color and contrast. WAN 2.5 does not respect that, and then also it almost always changes the look of the character themselves.
The only thing I wish to see is you at the end of my blade.
At least when it comes to anime. The only model I could get to pull this off was Kling 2.5 Turbo. If you may or may not know, they've now added start and end frames to their model, which, before I forget, WAN 2.5 does not have start and end frames. So that was the instance where I just took the entire prompt and tried to have the AI have her raise the sword up as she's talking, as opposed to having the end frame of the image. Just wanted to make sure I pointed that out so there's no confusion. By the way, if you want to try out WAN 2.5, I'm using OpenArt, and if you use the affiliate link in this video, they will give you free credits to try it out, and if you join their Discord server after signing up for free, be sure to follow the instructions because you'll also get some additional credits. So when I first tried out OpenArt, I probably spent a week testing some things out before I even actually paid any money. So again, if you want to check out OpenArt for free, be sure to use the affiliate link in the description of this video. But let me get back to what I was talking about before I forget. So again, Kling 2.5 Turbo starting in frames was the only video generator to actually pull this off, despite not being a talking model. Now, with this particular test, I had this image that I also generated in Stable Diffusion, and I thought, wouldn't it be pretty cool if she was actually levitating off the ground? And so I wanted to see if Nano Banana Pro could pull that off, because I think that would be an awesome start in frame to where she's on the ground and then all of a sudden she starts to levitate, and boom, using the prompt that I got from Claude, she is a few inches slightly off the ground. What I also imagined was having one of those scenes where, you know, maybe she's the villain, well, of course, because she looks like a villain, right? And she's talking shit to the rival character, and we do one of those anime smash cuts that go straight to the face, which is this right here. But the problem was just trying to get the smash cut off of this face right here in this reference image, it would not do it. It kept changing the image. It was looking different. And let's see. Yeah, so this was the first one that I did, and that just looked crazy. Like, I just noticed that it's like her head, and here's the ground down here. So that absolutely didn't work. And and I had more images, but I had to delete the node because again, there were some problems going on with Nano Banana where you were generating stuff and then nothing would show up and then things would eventually time out hours later. But again, that wouldn't work. And then so the only thing that I found that would work is, again, I came to the reference image and I took a screenshot using that crop tool shortcut that I showed you earlier on a Mac where Shift Control and 4. And I just took the face, downloaded it, and then uploaded the face portion right here to Nano Banana. And then I did the prompt off of that. And you can see this is the prompt right here where it says only change zoom camera to extreme close up on her face, forehead to chin framing, same anime style. This is a camera zoom, not a new expression. When I combined this reference image with this screenshot and put it on a new node, this is what I got. But in hindsight, if you see how blurry this is, I probably should have upscaled it first and then did it off of that, because when I get this image, it doesn't look all that great. Like, it looks like watercoloring smudge, and this is already at 4K, I believe. Well, it says 3392 by 5056, so I believe I did it at 4K. And that's the other thing that you're going to have to watch out for if you decide to generate in 4K, is that you've kind of already reached your peak to where if you needed to take this into something like Topaz Labs and try to clean up the face, it may make the image too big to where you can't use it in any of the video generators. I've had some images that were beyond 4K and I tried running them in Kling, and Kling was like, hey dude, you need to come back with a smaller size file. So that's why for the most part, if I know that the image that I have is not the final product, I'll keep everything below 4K, and then if I need any room to upscale in Topaz Labs, I can. But again, most of the time it works and it looks great, so you can absolutely get what you need out of Nano Banana at 4K. Or again, you have the option to add a new node, do image upscaler, and choose one of the various upscaling models that they have within Freepik. Again, this is already beyond 4K. It's just going to make it look either really crazy or the file size is just going to be so big that you can't do anything with it anywhere else. And then finally, I tried another thing to where I asked Nano Banana Pro to imagine what her rival looks like. So again, she's right here and she's talking shit, right? Because she's the villain. And I asked it to imagine what the rival character would look like. And Claude gave me this prompt to use with Nano Banana. And this looks pretty great because we also do a style transfer. So basically, not only do we get what the rival character looks like, but it also matches the aesthetic of the original reference image, which is pretty awesome. And I did have to run this a few times to get it to this particular image. I don't have that image history because again, I deleted it. But by the way, let me just mention this right quick. Your image history doesn't go away. If you want to see what you generated in the past, like for instance, like, you know, maybe you were using a node and you deleted it and you did something different, it doesn't delete the images. All you have to do is go to personal and you can just look at your image history and you'll have every single image that you generated. Again, here's where I talked about how Nano Banana was having issues to where nothing was generating, but it has all of the image history that you've done within Spaces, so you don't have to worry about that. So just keep that in mind. So at a high level view, these are some of the image iterations that I went through, just so that you can see that for yourself. That's the history, so that you can see that I'm not lying to you. But again, you know, that smash cut, it didn't match the original reference images, so I didn't end up using them. But the only thing that worked was the method that I told you, which was taking that screenshot of the close-up and then getting the shot that way. Now, out of all of my Nano Banana Pro testing, this is the one I had the most fun with, because now we're getting into image compositing on steroids, because I think this is a great way to demonstrate how Midjourney is not dead. Far from it. If you've noticed the pattern, I do a lot of style transfers as well as image compositing with things that I do within Midjourney. I mean, it's no secret that Midjourney has its own aesthetic. Just out of the box, it looks like cinema. But sadly, you can't get the type of consistent characters that you want out of Midjourney, so you have to look to other tools for that. In my AI Cinematographer's Midjourney Playbook training course, which you could find the link to in the description below this video, I've given my students a very consistent way to get the type of characters that they want, literally using one reference image. So I just want to be completely transparent with you. You're not going to get this type of image within Midjourney, if ever, but you can get some pretty badass other images that can be used within your AI cinematic film. And what I wanted to do with this particular sequence is I wanted to transform her into a 1980s scene. And so again, I took the reference image and I said to replace the wardrobe with all of this right here. And what's immediately apparent is that the leg tone carries over. And this again is a huge win, because if you don't know how to use Comfy UI, or maybe you don't know about Hugging Face and things like that, to be able to use something like Quinn Edit, you now for the most part don't have to do that. Again, I can't thank Google enough enough for moving in this direction because, again, this allows us to use the type of characters that we want. And you have to understand that, again, this is Nano Banana Pro, which is Nano Banana 2 basically, and it's only going to get better from here. You better believe that. Just look at all of the shit that transpired within 2025 itself. This was a banner year for AI filmmaking. We can only imagine what 2026 is going to look like. So again, this movie scene was outside of a 1980s video rental store at golden hour. Nano Banana nailed that, but there is something else that I do need to point out, despite the little rant that I just went on. Now, initially, this character and the prompt had it have a leather jacket on, but what I noticed is that with this leather jacket, it made her look very flat-chested. So for Nano Banana 3, hopefully something like that gets worked out because, again, you see that my reference character is definitely not flat-chested, and I worked on this prompt for a while and I still kept getting the exact same square shoulders, flat chest in the images. And so what I ended up doing was saying, hey, give the female a crop top. And when I did that, the flat chestedness went away. Now this comes back to what I talked about earlier. With this prompt, I actually had to get a bit smart about it because I didn't want to be like, hey, give me a prompt so that Nano Banana makes her breast bigger, right? What is that going to do? It's just going to trigger AI moderation. And so I said, hey, give me a prompt that allows me to say what I need to say without triggering AI moderation. And so that's when Claude explained to me, okay, we're going to use something about bust. That's a normal word you'd use in the fashion industry. And so that's why I said, do not alter bust, waist, or hip measurement. Now, I would say her hips are a bit more curvier over here than over here, but again, this is still not bad. And hopefully they'll just get improved in the future. Now, again, this is where it got very fun. Since I set the scene in the 1980s, I went and asked Claude to help remind me, because I was pretty much a kid in the 80s for most of the 80s, but I still remember a lot of stuff. Said, help me to remember the type of motorcycles that were in the 1980s. I know that there was the Kawasaki Ninja and things like that, and not only help remind me of the motorcycles, but give me the prompts of the motorcycles to try in Midjourney. And so I came over to Midjourney and I got all of these beautiful bikes from the 1980s. Suzuki I'd actually forgotten about, but you got Honda, Kawasaki, Yamaha, and you would actually see some of these bikes in something like a 1980s Cyberpunk anime. The other thing I did is I asked Claude to give me a Nano Banana Pro prompt to get an image of a California coastline as well as a 1980s film stock to match the scenery. And I got a lot of beautiful images, and it even gave me some to where if it was dreary, but this is the one that I actually decided on. And so back to Nano Banana, what I did was I said, hey, take my reference image and take this motorcycle from Midjourney and take this California coast reference image and combine them all together to show her on the motorcycle on the California coast. And when I ran the prompt, this is what I got, and that turned out pretty great. And just look at the words on the motorcycle itself. It actually cleaned it up better than what I got from Midjourney. You can see Kawasaki right here, and we've got the California coast behind her. Now, obviously, there was going to have to be some modification to the image because it wouldn't look exactly how I wanted based on the prompt that I gave it, to where it was supposed to be a camera where she's looking at it and it's head on. It's not behind her, it's not above her. This is the camera angle that I wanted. So Nano Banana took all of those elements together and came up with this. Now, again, if I'm being honest, I will say there is a bit of drift from this image to this image right here. I would say not by much, and definitely when I wanted to create the off-camera look, which is what I ended up using for a start and end frames test, but it's not too far off from the reference image itself. We can say it's her stunt double for now until we get Nano Banana 3. And speaking of the start and end frames test, what I wanted to do is have the camera whip around and show her from behind. So basically we start with this image right here and the camera follows and it moves behind her to this image right here. You will note right here that in this image, it actually looks like a dude in a motorcycle helmet with some glasses on and a very morphed face. And maybe you would be able to prompt Nano Banana to say, hey, you know, here's the reference image of her face, show her face in this reflection. I didn't too much worry about it because again, I was just testing this out. And if I remember, I'll show you what that looks like right now. just a couple more tests. So what I did was an image transfer to where I told it to take this reference image and I gave it a Cyberpunk themed image, and I wanted it to change everything to look like a Cyberpunk film, and this is what I got. This looks like an awesome scene. The only thing that I hate is that with Nano Banana Pro and some of the video generation models, you'll get rain, but it's like not consistent across the scene. Like there's rain over here and there's rain over here, but it doesn't look like there's rain right above her, even though she looks wet and the motorcycle looks wet. And from this, I didn't like these signs back here because they just look out of place. So I had Nano Banana actually remove those signs. And then I got the idea of, hey, you know, maybe there's an explosion that takes place back here, and let's see what that looks like with start and end frame. And the reason why I decided to use a start and end frame as opposed to just animating that is because whenever I tried this out earlier, the explosion size was just too big. I wasn't looking for the entire scene to show like this would be like a nuclear explosion where the entire city's engulfed in this explosion. That's not what I wanted. I just wanted it to be like, hey, an explosion happened in a certain part of the city. And again, with the end frame, you get more control of that. And this is what that looked like put together. And finally, I guess I did a style transfer on a style transfer. So again, this was this image and I asked for a anime style using the prompt that I got from Claude, and this is what that looked like. Now I don't too much care for this style and image. It's just too much going on right here, but it was just a quick test. Like I didn't give it any kind of really detailed prompt like in the style of and then maybe a Japanese animator. I didn't do any of that, but this is what I got, just doing a simple prompt that just says refer to the attached and reimagine it as a late 80s early 90s dark cyberpunk anime thriller. And once again, that was achieved by connecting this reference image to a new image generator node and entering the prompt directly in that box. So again, two ways of doing this. You can have the prompt box and then attach it to the image, but I think going forward, I'm just going to have the prompt on the image itself. Now let's talk about the elephant in the room, the actual pricing of Nano Banana Pro. And as you can see right here, it is currently 13 cents per image, and I believe that applies to both 1K and 2K, and to generate in 4K, it currently costs 24 cents per image. To put that in comparison, Nano Banana 1, which uses the Gemini 2.5 flash model, currently costs about 4 cents per image, and Dream 4 Edit currently costs 3 cents per image. So the Nano Banana Pro model is literally almost 3 times more expensive than the previous version. To break this perspective down even further, if you generated 100 images, you would pay $3.90 for Nano Banana 1, $13.40 for Nano Banana Pro, and only $3 for Dream 4 Edit. If you wanted to generate 500 images, it's $19.50 with Nano Banana 1, $67 with Nano Banana Pro, and only $15 with Dream 4. So as you can see, the more that you start to generate, the more you're going to pay for Nano Banana Pro, and as of right now, the pricing is pretty unforgiving. So during this video, while I was doing my testing, Freepik was actually running a promo to where they gave us unlimited use of Nano Banana Pro for the Premium and Premium Plus users. Premium Plus is what I have, and it was only until November 27th, which means that after November 27th, I'll be in the same boat as everyone else, having to pay these high-ass prices if I want to use the Pro model. So, as I mentioned in my post on X, I recommend using Nano Banana Pro for final frames and even thumbnails, and I would stick to the original or Dream 4 for just testing and iteration. So basically, you can use Nano Banana 1 to work out all of the kinks in your prompts, and if I am not mistaken, it's still going to be unlimited in Freepik for Nano Banana 1, up to 800 images. Once you get all of that worked out, then switch over to your final draft of your scenes in Nano Banana Pro. Hope that makes sense. So how many of you guys have actually adopted Freepik Spaces to use to storyboard your AI narrative films? Again, I can't think of a more simpler layout to be able to see your entire film on one canvas and make changes to it as you go or expand on it as you please. Again, I know there are other tools out there like Flora, and Adobe has something similar, but I've been using Freepik for a very long while, and all of this stuff just works. Also, what are your thoughts about Nano Banana Pro? Are you guys able to achieve the exact same results that I have in this video? Or are you running into a lot of AI moderation? Let me know in the comments below this video. And once again, if you're wanting to create consistent characters like the ones that I'm making, I've made this very simple for my students. What you're going to want to do is check out the module From Basic to Badass in the AI Cinematographer's Midjourney Playbook training. To enroll today, be sure to check the description in this video or the first pinned comment and you'll be good to go. And if you want to see a deeper dive into my testing with Kling 2.5 Turbo versus Google Veo versus Juan, then be sure to check out this video on your screen. Once again, my name is Paul Donis Maximus. Be sure to like and subscribe because that does help us out here and we very much appreciate it. And thank you for checking out this video. Please join me in the next one.